Now, why do a lot of people struggle with the idea of consistent motivation? A lot of people throw around the word motivation and usually see it as a temporary feeling or something of inspiration and consistency. But really, when it comes down to it, how do we actually maintain motivation so that it is a consistent feeling that we always have, that's always there, that we can rely on? Now, a lot of people say, well, let's develop discipline. And if we develop discipline, then we don't need to rely on motivation. But I actually believe that motivation is extremely necessary, but we need to make sure that motivation is consistent and is permanent, that we have an infinite resource of motivation for our goals so that we can constantly keep striving and improving our behaviors towards that goal that we want to achieve. Now, this is completely dependent on how we view motivation. So most people view motivation in an extrinsic way. So we have one form of motivation called extrinsic motivation. And extrinsic motivation is about how things outside of ourselves in the external world pull us towards action. So we want validation and motivation in terms of finances, or we're trying to avoid something so that gives us motivation. So to avoid a specific outcome that we don't want. Now, this is all to do with the external world, and this is what will only be useful to a certain finite degree. And a lot of the time when we're talking about, oh, you need to instead develop discipline rather than how you can't rely on motivation, the people who say that are because the reason why their motivation ends up running out is because they are relying on extrinsic motivation to get themselves to do things. And this is not good because it's not something that can be infinite. A true purposeful form of motivation that can be infinite is intrinsic motivation, to develop us a sense of intrinsic motivation towards a certain thing that we do on a daily basis. And this is to do with what satisfies us, what brings us purpose, what brings us meaning, what takes us outside of the existential void and gives us something of true purpose, direction, and meaning for our lives. And once we can identify that, we can then constantly have motivation towards those goals so that we constantly keep improving our behaviors. Now, a big problem that a lot of people face is one of this problem, identifying the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, and making sure that we focus on the intrinsic. But when let's say someone is in a career or they are in a certain the passion project that they're doing, but they suddenly just run out of motivation and they hit burnout and they don't want to do it anymore, but they do still want to try and push through. The way we basically optimize our intrinsic motivation is by identifying, in this situation, the 5 intrinsic motivators as principles. So what are the principles that basically create intrinsic motivation? So the 5 intrinsic motivators that make up motivation as principles that make up intrinsic motivation are curiosity, mastery, autolicity, purpose, and autonomy. These are the things we need to maintain and optimize so that we constantly are in a state of intrinsic motivation, so that we never lose motivation, so that we never lose willpower and drive towards our goals. So what we need to do is fundamentally look at each one of these and optimize them and think of them in relation to what you're doing, your career, whatever it is, so that you can identify which one is specifically flatlining with what you are doing, so that you can identify that and then optimize it as you see fit so that your intrinsic motivation increases once again. So curiosity would be obviously the insatiable itch to learn everything you work on. How is that flatlining or not? Mastery is the pursuit for excellence and continued improvement. So how is that flatlining or not? Autolicity, which is kind of a strange one, is the love for the activities you do at work. So the things you actually do. In what way are you suddenly starting to hate the things you actually do in the work that you're doing, but still kind of love the the actual job itself. So what do you need to do to change that up for yourself? Purpose is, of course, how the work you do fulfills a higher meaning. So if it's not fulfilling a higher meaning, how can you realign it towards your values and what you truly find purposeful in your life in relation to your personality? And of course, autonomy is being in control of when, how, and what. The when, how, and what of your work. So if you're in a job that's very time constrained and that is pulling down your motivation, we need to figure out, okay, how do I put myself into a career shift so that I can then develop my autonomy, develop the purpose that I once had again, the autolicity, be in love with the actual work itself. Why is my pursuit for excellence falling back, or how do I want to find that sense of self-mastery with this work? And of course, curiosity. Is your curiosity falling back or not? Is it as strong as it was once when you were, studying a bachelor's degree, when you were full on into studying and pursuit? Or is it in your job at the moment, or whatever it may be, is it kind of falling to the wayside because the way you are working isn't as fulfilling as it used to be? So it's looking at these 5 intrinsic motivators, the principles that ground and make intrinsic motivation existent, and seeing which ones are flatlining, seeing which ones are, the complete opposite of flatlining, seeing which ones are actually succeeding at a high degree, and being able to recognize which ones are and which ones are not, so that you can then apply yourself in these different ways through self-analysis, through self-discovery, so that you can then boost your motivation back up. So that's truly how you kind of hack or try and optimize your intrinsic motivation. You do not want to base your career off extrinsic motivation, because as soon as that extrinsic motivation that you being guided towards suddenly disappears, your willpower will also go, because it's not something that is actually in relation to your purpose, in relation to the meaning of your life, in relation to what you truly find curious, that you want to become a master at, or that you want true freedom and autonomy with. So that is truly what you need to focus on when it comes to motivation. Yes, be disciplined, but if you want continuous energy and willpower and drive, you need to master your understanding of intrinsic motivation and optimizing the principles that make up intrinsic motivation itself. So if you enjoyed this video, guys, make sure to give it a like, comment your thoughts down below. Where are you personally at with your journey of purpose, meaning, and all of this? Are you someone who is very motivated, very disciplined? How does it work out for you? And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe for more continuous videos like this. If you're interested, of course, also in working on things like motivation, discipline, overcoming bad habits, overcoming procrastination, you can book in a free one-on-one coach call with me, where we can have a chat and see how we can overcome those problems by me applying the solutions that I have learned to your issues that you're currently struggling with. So if that is something you're interested in as well, then do book in a free one-on-one discovery call with me in the link below. But with that said, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you in the next one.